When the last lamp on the high street goes out, Amberwick begins to wake. Not loudly, not all at once, just a single window, glowing gold above a bakery door, then a lantern swaying gently from a harbor post, then another and another. Somewhere, a bell on the old bicycle down Lantern Row gives one soft ring and falls quiet again. The harbor bell, old and green with age, sways once in a passing breath of wind, and does not ring at all, only hums, faintly, a low note beneath everything else. If you have never been to Amberwick, you might imagine it as any small harbor town, huddled between dark hills and a darker sea. And in some ways, you would be right. But there is something else here too, something harder to name. A stillness that feels almost deliberate, as though the whole town has agreed, quietly, without ever discussing it, to move a little slower after dark, to speak a little softer, to let the day's small worries settle, gently, into the fog. Tonight, we go to the Lighthouse. Tonight, we go to see Mira. Settle in. Let your shoulders drop. There is nowhere else you need to be. At the very edge of Amberwick, where the cobbled streets give way to wet black rock, there stands a lighthouse. It is not the tallest lighthouse you have ever seen, nor the grandest. Its pane is a little worn, the white gone slightly gray near the base, the red trim faded to a soft rust color, like an old ribbon that has been kept for years in a drawer. But it is loved. You can tell a building is loved by the way its door has been oiled so it doesn't creak, by the way the brass handle has been polished by 1,000 quiet hands, by the way, even at this late hour, a light glows warm behind its topmost window. That is where Mira is. Mira Voss has kept this lighthouse for as long as anyone in Amberwick can remember. She's not old, not exactly, but there is something timeless about her. The kind of face that could belong to someone 30 or someone 60, depending on the light. Dark hair, streaked here and there with silver, tied back low with a simple piece of string. A forest green wool coat, a little too big for her, its brass buttons catching the lamplight when she moves. She keeps a brass lantern beside her at all times, though tonight she hasn't needed to light it. The moon is doing that work for her. Right now, she is sitting at a small wooden desk near the top of the lighthouse, in the round room just beneath the great lamp. The desk is old, scarred with rings from 100 forgotten cups of tea. On it lies a thick leather logbook, its pages soft and curling slightly at the corners from years of damp sea air. She dips her pen. She begins to write. Tonight's log, 3rd night of the month. Wind, almost none. Sea, unusually calm. Sky, clear, but for a low bank of fog resting just past the harbor mouth, like it is waiting for something, though I could not say what. She pauses. Read the words back to herself. Something about tonight feels different, though she cannot quite name it. Not wrong, just different. Softer, somehow, as if the whole town has taken one long, slow breath and is holding it. She sets the pen down for a moment and looks out through the tall glass window beside her desk. From up here, Mira can see almost all of Amberwick. Let us look with her. Directly below, the harbor curves inward like a cupped hand, holding a dozen small fishing boats that rock so gently tonight, they barely make a sound against the water. Their masts are bare for the season, dark lines against the dark sky, and little lanterns hang from a few of them, small orange dots, swaying, like slow blinking eyes. Beyond the harbor, the cobbled street called Lantern Row wends its way up into the town. If you have never walked it, imagine this. Narrow buildings pressed close together, each one a slightly different color beneath the dark, cream, and dull blue, and a soft rose that has faded almost to gray, with lanterns hung above every door, so that the whole street glows like a strand of warm beads laid across the hillside. Mira has watched this street for so many years. She could describe every building with her eyes closed. There, third from the corner, is the bakery, its chimney sending up a thin curl of smoke even now, because Thomas Cade believes that dough sleeps better when the night is dark and the oven is warm, and he has never once been in a hurry to prove himself wrong. She cannot see him from here, not exactly, but she knows he is there. She knows because she can almost smell it, that far-off drift of warm bread and butter that seems to find its way to the lighthouse no matter which way the wind blows. Further along, past the bakery, a narrow shop with a small brass bell above its door, and a single low lamp burning behind dusty glass. This is Elias Thorne's shop, though most nights you would not know anyone was inside at all, because Elias makes almost no sound when he works. Tonight, if you listen closely enough, and Mira, who has spent so many nights alone with only her own thoughts for company, has learned to listen very closely, you might hear the faintest ticking. Dozens of clocks, all slightly out of time with one another, all being coaxed gently back into rhythm by a patient, careful hand. And there, weaving down from the top of the hill, a small light moves along the street. Not a lantern this time, but a bicycle lamp, bobbing slightly with each turn of the wheel. That will be Wren, making the last round of the night, though from this distance, Mira cannot tell if there are any letters left in the satchel or not. She smiles, just slightly, and picks her pen back up. All windows lit, all quiet. Wren still making rounds past midnight, I should ask, gently, if there's too much this week. She writes it down, then underlines nothing, because there's no need to underline anything tonight. Nothing urgent, nothing to fix. Just a town, breathing slowly in its sleep. Mira sets down her pen again, and turns fully toward the window, resting her forearms against the cool stone sill. The sea tonight really is strange. Not stormy strange. Not dangerous strange. Just still. Amberwick's harbor is rarely without at least some small movement. A ripple chasing a ripple, the slap of water against a hull, the low groan of old rope pulling taut and then loose again. Tonight, there is almost none of that. The water lies flat and dark, like a sheet of glass someone has laid gently over the whole bay, and the moon sits on top of it in one long, unbroken line of silver, all the way out to where the fog waits. She has kept this lighthouse for many years now, and she has learned that the sea has moods, the same as people do. Some nights it is restless, tossing and turning, unable to settle. Other nights it seems almost sulky, gray and silent, and turned inward. And then there are nights like tonight, nights when the sea seems, for lack of a better word, at peace. She lets herself enjoy it. There is no reason not to. She thinks of all the ships that have come into this harbor, over all the years. Fishing boats coming home heavy with the day's catch. The mail packet twice a month, its little steam engine chugging patiently. Once, a long time ago now, a grand old sailing ship that stopped only for a single night. Its captain an old friend of the harbor, gone now. Though Mira still remembers the way he laughed. Above her, through the tall window, a few stars still show faintly between thin, drifting patches of cloud, though she suspects they will not last the hour, not with the fog bank waiting so patiently out past the harbor mouth. She has always liked this particular kind of sky, caught between clear and clouded, as though the night itself cannot quite decide what it wants to be. She does not mind either way. Clear sky or fog, calm sea or restless. The lighthouse asks the same small thing of her regardless, only that she watch and that she be here. Tonight, no ships are expected. The log for tonight, if nothing changes, will be a short and simple one. And there is something comforting in that. Not every night needs a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Some nights are simply themselves, quiet and whole, and enough. She writes one more line. No vessels expected before dawn. Harbor lamps all lit and steady. I find I do not mind an uneventful night. Some are needed. She sets the pen in its holder and reaches instead for the small tin mug of tea sitting, slightly cool now, at the corner of the desk. There's a soft sound on the stairs, not a knock. Mira's lighthouse door has been left ajar all evening, the way it usually is on calm nights, but a light, unhurried patter, paw over paw, climbing the worn wooden steps that spiral up from the base of the tower. A moment later, an orange shape appears in the doorway. A cat, well-fed but not fat, with white paws and one ear slightly torn at the tip from some long-forgotten scuffle, and a distinctive white patch on his chest, like he's wearing a tiny waistcoat of his own. Evening. Biscuit, Mira says, without turning around, because she already knows the sound of those particular footsteps. Biscuit does not belong to anyone in Amberwick, not officially. He simply belongs to the town itself, moving between doorsteps and warm windowsills as he pleases, welcomed everywhere, claimed by no one. Tonight, it seems, he has chosen the lighthouse. He crosses the small round room without hurry, hops up onto the low windowsill beside Mira's desk, turns once, twice, and settles himself into a loose orange circle, tail curled neatly over his nose. Mira reaches over, almost without thinking, and rests 2 fingers gently against the top of his head. He does not open his eyes, but a low, steady purring begins, barely audible beneath the sound of the sea.
"You've had a long walk tonight, I expect," she says softly. "Bakery, and then the clock shop, and now all the way up here. You do love to make your rounds." The cat says nothing, of course, though his purring deepens slightly, as if in agreement. Mira has often wondered on quiet nights like this what Biscuit's rounds must look like, from his own small point of view, threading between doorsteps and gardens and the warm undersides of parked carts, welcomed everywhere, belonging fully to no single place. She likes to think that he understands the town in a way none of the rest of them quite can, not through streets and names, but through smells and warmth and the particular quality of a welcome. The bakery, warm and sweet. The clock shop, dim and dusty and full of quiet ticking. And here, at the top of the lighthouse, something else altogether. Salt air and lantern oil, and the steady, patient company of a woman who never seems to mind sharing her desk with a sleeping cat. Mira picks her pen back up, more out of habit than necessity, and adds one final line to tonight's log, smiling faintly as she writes it. Additional crew member reporting for duty. As usual, no complaints on his part about the hours. She closes the logbook, not because she is finished with the night, but because, for now, there's nothing more that needs writing down. Some things are better simply lived and remembered later than written as they happen. Mira leans back in her chair, one hand still resting lightly on Biscuit's small, warm back, and lets her eyes drift half-closed. She thinks sometimes on nights like this of how long the lighthouse has stood here. Longer than she has kept it. Longer, probably, than anyone now living in Amberwick can properly remember. There are stories, the kind passed down not in books, but in the quiet way old towns pass things along, a little at a time, over many years, of a keeper before her, and one before that, each of them sitting in this very room, watching this very sea, writing in logbooks not so different from her own. She likes to imagine them sometimes. A woman, perhaps, sitting where she sits now, 100 years ago, watching ships she cannot picture the shape of, worrying about storms that came and went and are now simply part of the sea's long memory. She likes to think that the sea remembers all of them, every keeper, every quiet night, every small kindness done in the dark hours when no one else was awake to see it. There is a comfort in that thought, that she is only one small link in a long, unbroken chain of people who have chosen, for reasons of their own, to stay awake so that others could sleep soundly. Fishermen trust the lighthouse to guide them home. The town trusts it to mark the edge between land and sea, safety and the unknown. And in exchange, the lighthouse asks for very little, only that someone stay and watch and write down what they see. She thinks of Tomas, 3 streets down, doing something not so different in his own way, staying up so that in the morning there will be warm bread for those who wake tired and in need of something simple and good. She thinks of Elias, coaxing old clocks back into rhythm so that time itself keeps moving gently forward in Amberwick, never rushed, never late. She thinks of Wren, still out there somewhere with the last of tonight's letters, making sure that no one in town goes to sleep without whatever small piece of the world was waiting for them. There is one keeper in particular Mira likes to think of, more than the others, an old woman named Agnes Merle, who kept this very lighthouse for nearly 40 years before Mira ever set foot in it. Mira never met her. Not really. She was only a young girl the last time Agnes climbed these stairs. But she remembers being brought up here once, holding her mother's hand, and being lifted just high enough to see over the edge of this very desk. She remembers Agnes's hands most of all, weathered and sure, guiding her small fingers gently across the open pages of a logbook, not so different from the one in front of her now. Every night gets written down, Agnes had told her, in a voice like the low murmur of the sea itself. Even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones, because someday some other keeper will want to know that a night like this one was possible, that the sea can rest, that a town can sleep soundly, and nothing needs to happen at all. Mira had not understood, not fully, not then. She had been too young to understand why anyone would want to read about a night where nothing happened, but she understands now, all these years later, sitting in the very same chair, her own hand resting on the very same worn wood of the desk. She understands that comfort is not only found in stories of danger survived, or storms weathered, or ships saved at the very last moment. Sometimes comfort is found simply in proof, written down carefully, night after night, that peace is possible, that the sea and the town and everyone in it can simply rest. She wonders sometimes what happened to all of Agnes's old logbooks, 40 years of them, stacked somewhere, she supposes, in some dry corner of the town hall, or perhaps kept still by a relative she never knew. She likes to imagine them sometimes on quiet nights like this one, 40 years of quiet nights and calm seas, patiently written down by a woman who understood, long before Mira ever did, that the quietest nights are often the ones most worth remembering. She dips her pen once more, though there is little left to add to tonight's log, and writes only this. Thinking tonight of A.M. and of quiet nights recorded, and of the particular comfort in knowing that peace, once written down, is never really lost. She sets the pen down gently, letting the thought settle, the way the fog outside is settling, slow and soft and entirely unhurried. Everyone in Amberwick, she thinks, is keeping some kind of quiet watch tonight. And there is something deeply peaceful in that thought, the idea that even in the stillest, quietest hours, someone, somewhere, is gently tending to something. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just steady, patient care. Let us drift down from the lighthouse for a moment, down through the fog-softened air, down to the warm little window of the bakery on Lantern Row. Inside, Tomas Cade is exactly where you would expect him to be, standing at his long wooden table, sleeves rolled to the elbow, a light dusting of flour across his forearms like a fine snowfall. He is not in any hurry. He is never in any hurry. There is a saying he likes, one his mother used to say to him when he was a boy, watching her hands work the same dough in the same slow, patient way, on the same kind of quiet night. Bread that is rushed, she used to tell him, remembers being rushed. You can taste it. So Tomas does not rush. He folds the dough gently, turns it, folds it again, waiting for it to tell him, in its own slow way, when it is ready. The ovens behind him glow a low, steady orange, warming the whole small shop until the windows have fogged over from the inside as much as the fog has settled outside. He thinks, as he often does at this hour, of his mother's kitchen, far from here, in a town whose name has softened in his memory the way sugar softens in warm milk. He does not miss it exactly, not in any way that hurts. It simply lives inside him now, quietly, the way a good memory should, folded gently into everything he makes. On the shelf above the ovens sits a small tin, slightly dented, that once belonged to her. He does not open it tonight. He does not need to. Simply knowing it is there, catching the oven light, is enough. Outside his window, the fog presses soft and gray against the glass. Somewhere above, though he cannot see it from here, the lighthouse lamp turns and turns, patient as his own hands are patient. He does not think of Mira often by name, but he thinks sometimes of the light itself, glad that it is there, glad that someone is watching so that he does not have to. He sets the last tray into the oven, wipes his hands on his apron, and allows himself, finally, to rest in the old wooden chair by the door, listening to the low, comfortable creak of the oven settling, the faint tick of cooling metal, the whisper of fog against glass. Tomorrow there will be bread. Tonight there is only this, warmth and quiet, and the slow, unhurried patience of dough that is finally ready to rise. A little further along Lantern Row, past two darkened shop fronts and a lantern that flickers slightly before steadying again, is Elias Thorne's small clock shop. If Thomas's world is warmth and flour and patient waiting, Elias's world is a quieter kind of patience altogether, made of small brass gears and delicate springs, and the soft, steady language of things that tick. Tonight Elias sits at his workbench, a single lamp pulled low and close, casting a small, precise circle of light over the clock in front of him, an old mantel clock, its face slightly yellowed with age, brought to him 3 days ago by a woman from the far end of town, who said only that it had belonged to her grandmother, and that it had stopped quite suddenly, without warning, some weeks ago. Elias does not ask questions about such things. He has learned over many years of this work that people bring him more than clocks. They bring him small pieces of grief, wrapped in brass and glass, hoping that if the clock can be made to tick again, some other quiet ache might ease along with it. He cannot promise that, but he can promise to be patient. He can promise to look closely and carefully, and not to rush.
He lifts a tiny spring with a pair of fine tweezers, turns it gently in the lamplight, examining it the way another person might examine a rare and delicate flower. Somewhere beneath his work table, a dozen other clocks tick on in their own separate rhythms, none of them quite matching. A soft and scattered percussion that Elias finds, more than anything else, deeply calming. He likes to imagine that somewhere in all that overlapping ticking, if you listen closely enough for long enough, you might hear a kind of accidental music. He sets the spring gently back into place, tightens one final, careful screw, and winds the mechanism slowly. Listening. A pause. And then, softly, almost shyly, the old clock begins to tick once more, falling, after a moment, into rhythm with all the others. Elias allows himself the smallest of smiles, the kind that barely reaches the corners of his mouth, and makes a short note in the small notebook he keeps beside his tools. Ready for collection, it says, in careful, upright handwriting. Nothing more. He does not need to write down the rest, the woman's quiet relief, the grandmother's memory ticking gently back into the world. Some things do not need to be written to be understood. Outside, the fog has thickened further still, pressing soft and pale against his window, and Elias, satisfied, at last allows himself to rest, and high on the hill above Lantern Row, where the cobbled street gives way to a narrower, quieter lane, Wren is nearly at the end of her rounds. The satchel across her chest is almost empty now, save for one final letter, a little worn at the corners, the address written in a careful, looping hand that Wren has come to recognize over many months of these late deliveries. It is addressed to old Mrs. Abernathy, who lives alone at the very top of the hill, in a small house with blue shutters, and a garden gone slightly wild with lavender. Wren does not know what is inside the letter. That is not her business, and she has never once been tempted to look. But she has noticed, over the months, that letters from this particular hand always arrive on quiet nights like this one, and that Mrs. Abernathy always answers the door herself, no matter the hour, as though she has been waiting up especially. Tonight is no different. Wren leans her bicycle carefully against the low garden wall, climbs the 3 worn stone steps, and knocks softly. A long moment passes. Then the door opens, just a little, and Mrs. Abernathy's face appears in the gap, lined with age but lit, for just a moment, with something soft and hopeful. "From your son," Wren says quietly, holding out the letter. Mrs. Abernathy takes it with both hands, the way someone might take something precious and slightly fragile, and presses it, just briefly, against her chest, before she has even opened it. "Thank you, dear," she says. "You must be tired, going round so late." "Not too tired," Wren says, and means it. There is something about this last delivery, every single night, that never quite feels like work. Mrs. Abernathy nods, already turning back toward the warm light of her hallway, already eager, Wren can tell, to sit by her window and read whatever small piece of her son's life has traveled all this way to reach her. The door closes, softly, and a moment later, the lamp in the front window brightens, just slightly, as though someone has drawn a chair closer to it. Wren stands for a moment in the quiet, foggy lane. Satchel empty now, breath visible in small, pale clouds. Somewhere far below, she can just make out the lighthouse lamp, turning steadily through the mist, and beyond it, the dark, calm shape of the sea. She swings back onto her bicycle and begins, slowly, the long ride back down toward the harbor, where a warm bed and a well-earned rest are waiting. Some time passes. Mira isn't sure exactly how long, perhaps 20 minutes, perhaps closer to an hour. Time moves differently at the top of a lighthouse, late at night, with a cat asleep against your arm, and the sea lying so still and quiet below. She notices, eventually, that the low bank of fog she wrote about earlier has begun, very slowly, to drift inward. It doesn't rush. Fog in Amberwick never rushes. It simply arrives, the way a tide arrives, a little further in with each slow minute, curling first around the furthest fishing boats, softening their shapes, turning sharp masts into gentle gray suggestions of masts. Then further in, past the harbor wall, until even the nearest lanterns along the dock begin to look soft-edged and dreamlike, their orange glow blooming outward into small, fuzzy halos. Mira watches it come without any concern at all. She has seen this fog 1,000 times, and she knows its habits well. It will roll in slowly, softening every edge of the town, and by early morning, it will lift again, just as quietly as it came, leaving everything clean and a little bit new. She picks up her logbook once more. Fog arriving as expected, slow and gentle. Visibility softening, but no cause for concern. Lamp burning steady. All quiet. She sets the pen down and simply watches for a while, letting the soft gray light fill the little round room, blurring the line between the lighthouse and the sea, between the sea and the sky, until it feels as if the whole world outside her window has been wrapped gently in a single, soft, gray blanket. It is some time later, how much later Mira could not say, when she notices a small light, very far off, somewhere out past the edge of the fog bank. She sits forward slightly, more curious than concerned. Amberwick's harbor is a quiet one, and unexpected lights, at this hour, are rare enough to draw the eye, though rarely rare enough to cause any real worry. She reaches for the old brass spyglass she keeps by the window, worn smooth by years of handling, and lifts it carefully to one eye. There, far out on the flat, dark water, a single small light moves steadily, unhurried, toward the harbor. Not a distress signal. She can tell that much immediately. There is no urgency in the way it moves, no frantic flashing. Just a small, steady lantern light, rising and falling very slightly with a gentle swell, making its slow way home. She watches for a long while, patient, the way she has learned to be patient with the sea. Slowly, slowly, the light grows a little larger, a little clearer, until at last, through the thinning fog directly ahead of it, she can make out the low, familiar shape of a fishing boat, the kind that goes out further than most, staying close to the deeper waters for a night or two at a time, before returning. She smiles, recognizing it now. The Marrow's Rest, old Godfrey's boat, out later than usual this week, though not unusually so. She lifts her pen, unhurried herself now, and adds a small note. Marrow's Rest returnin', later than her usual night, but steady and unharmed. We'll watch her safely in. She does not need to do anything more than that. The boat knows this harbor as well as she does. It has come home through fog thicker than this, more times than either of them could count. All that is needed of her tonight is simply to watch, to be the steady light that tells a tired crew, still some way out on the dark water, that home is close and safe and waiting. She keeps the spyglass raised a while longer, watching the little lantern light grow steadily larger, until at last the boat slips quietly past the harbor wall, sails already lowered, the soft creak of rope and wood carrying faintly across the still water. A figure on deck lifts one hand toward the lighthouse, a small, tired, grateful wave, and Mira, though she knows he cannot possibly see her this clearly through the glass, lifts her own hand in return. The boat eases toward its mooring, slow and careful in the fog thick and dark, and within a few quiet minutes, it is still, tied fast, safely home. Below, on the dock, she can just make out the small, dark shapes of the crew, 3 of them, moving slowly and stiffly after what must have been a long few days at sea, gathering their gear with the unhurried motions of people who are tired in a good way, the kind of tired that only wants a warm bed and nothing else. One of them, she thinks it might be young Callum, Godfrey's nephew, pauses for a moment on the dock, tilts his head back, and simply breathes, taking in the still, fog-wrapped harbor, as though he has missed it more than he expected to. They will walk up through the quiet street soon. Mira knows, past the darkened windows of Lantern Row, perhaps catching the last faint smell of Tomas's bread, drifting from the bakery chimney, perhaps hearing the soft, scattered ticking from Elias's shop as they pass. Small, unremarkable moments that they will not think twice about, and yet moments that stitch them, quietly, back into the fabric of the town they left a few days ago. That is the particular gift of a harbor town, Mira thinks. No matter how far out you go, no matter how long you're gone, there's always this, a quiet walk home through familiar streets, made gentler by the very ordinariness of it. Mira sets down the spyglass and finds that she is smiling. The particular kind of quiet, satisfied smile that comes only from watching something come safely home after being, for a while, unaccounted for. She writes one final note beside the first. Marrow's Rest, moored safe. 11 minutes past the hour. All crew accounted for, by the look of it. A good end to an easy night. She sets the pen down and allows herself, at last, to simply breathe, the small, warm satisfaction of the moment settling over her, like the fog itself, soft and complete, and asking for nothing more. For a long while, Mira does not write anything at all.
She simply sits, one hand resting on the warm, sleeping shape of Biscuit, the lantern beside her casting a soft gold circle of light across the desk, the logbook, the worn wooden floor. Outside, the fog has thickened until she can no longer see the harbor at all, only a pale, endless gray, pressed gently against the glass, as if the whole world had quietly decided to rest for a while. The foghorn, somewhere below, gives its low, familiar call, not urgent, not alarming, just a slow, steady reminder that the lighthouse is here, doing what it has always done, watching, waiting, keeping something safe that cannot always be named. Mira closes her eyes for a moment, just a moment, and breathes in the damp, salt-heavy air drifting faintly through the cracked open window. She thinks of nothing in particular. Not worries, not plans for tomorrow, not old memories. Just this, the lantern light, the fog, the cat's slow breathing beside her, the sea somewhere far below, patient and still. If you have been listening closely, if your own eyes have grown heavy somewhere along the way, you might notice that your breathing has slowed too, matching itself, without meaning to the quiet rhythm of this room. That is all right. That is more than all right. That is exactly what this moment is for. Slowly, slowly, the night deepens further. Down on Lantern Row, the last light in Tomas's bakery finally dims, the ovens banked low for the remaining hours before dawn, the smell of warm bread lingering in the fog like a memory that hasn't quite decided to fade yet. In his small shop, Elias sets down the tiny screwdriver he has been holding for the better part of an hour and looks, satisfied, at a single small clock now ticking in perfect time with its neighbors. He does not smile exactly. He rarely does, but there is a certain softness in his shoulders as he closes up for the night. Somewhere near the top of the hill, Wren's bicycle lamp has finally gone still, propped against the side of the old post office, the satchel empty now, every letter delivered to wherever it needed to go. And high above it all, in the round room at the top of the Lighthouse, Mira Voss opens her logbook one final time. End of watch. All quiet. Fog thick but harmless. Sea calm. Town asleep or nearly so. Nothing more to report tonight, and for once, I find I am glad of it. She closes the book gently and does not open it again until tomorrow night. Biscuit stretches once, without waking fully, and resettles himself more deeply against Mira's side. Mira reaches over and turns the small lamp on her desk down low. Not off, never quite off, because a lighthouse never fully sleeps, but low enough that the room settles into a soft, warm dimness, the great lamp above continuing its slow, steady turnout over the fog-wrapped sea. Outside, Amberwick rests. The boats rock gently, unseen in the gray. The Merrows rest settled now among them, her tired crew already climbing, one slow step at a time, toward warm beds and dreamless sleep. The bakery cools, slowly, sweetly, its ovens ticking as they lose their heat, the last warm scent of the night's bread drifting soft through the fog. The clocks tick on, patient and even, 40 small mechanisms and more, all finally in time with one another, all counting the same slow minutes toward morning. The letters, all delivered, wait quietly in dark houses for morning, held gently in sleeping hands, or set carefully on bedside tables, ready to be read again in the honest light of day. Far below, at the top of a quiet hill, a lamp in a window with blue shutters burns a little longer than the rest. An old woman reading, slowly, a letter from her son, her lips moving faintly around words she will read at least twice more before she finally allows herself to sleep. And somewhere above it all, the lighthouse keeps its watch, the way it always has, the way it always will, steady and warm and quiet. If you are still here with us, if your own eyes have grown heavy somewhere along this quiet night, then let them close now, fully, gently. There is nothing more you need to watch for tonight. Amberwick will still be here tomorrow, and so will we. Good night,